Our task is to squeeze out our natural fluids, that is to gradually and steadily shift the Starling equilibrium toward resorption, specifically at the level of our tissues, right here, that is, by creating a bit of excess pressure from the outside. How can we do this? Well, here are our techniques. The only thing is that lymph and fluid in general doesn't like force, it doesn't like great effort, but it does like time and smoothness, like this. You can alternate, for example, with drainage techniques, again, if needed. If you want like this. And there are many techniques here. There is, for example, a very interesting technique, the figure 8. Like this, the hands move apart, come together, move apart, come together. You see, this hand is always working here, and this one is always here, specifically in these directions. But at the same time, this is at the level of the palms. Well, and not at the level of the palms. Okay, now, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. We're doing the same thing, just like before. The same thing, understood? Let's keep it going, nice and steady. Again, all these various techniques, keep practicing them and you'll get better each time. Gravity is also working for us here. Go ahead. You can also add a light shaking. And all of these are really able to fit here as well. And articulation in this way, with squeezing too. See, now I'm doing a deep squeeze. So keep in mind, the deeper and more powerful your pressure on the tissues, right now you see I'm using my whole weight. When you lean in, you increase the amount of resorption that takes place. This means that more tissue fluid, which is basically pure water located between your cells, is absorbed back into your circulatory system. The more you lean in, the more this process happens, allowing a greater amount of this fluid to move into your bloodstream. Because the lymphatic system, it starts to get stuck already at the first there. If we're talking about lymph, very gentle ones dominate. Slow, gentle and light rubbing helps to promote the superficial movement of lymph. You can also do the very same thing with your forearm, especially when working over a larger area. That is, do not rush or try to increase the pressure too quickly. Why do we pay so much attention to such a low capacity system as the lymphatic system? So we have about 1.2 liters of lymph in the entire body, in total. Well, maybe someone like Maxim has about 2 liters, perhaps, maybe even 2.5. Now, if a person weighs 150 kilograms, well, it'll be a bit more. But there's much more blood. Moreover, lymph flows very slowly. So, by using only lymph, draining even a millimeter of volume is just impossible. So, when specialists start saying they've removed 5 or 6 centimeters in one session through lymphatic drainage, it starts to amuse me. And I just want to refer that person to a basic physiology textbook. It's not lymph they're removing interstitial fluid. And they're mostly not removing it through the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system has a very low capacity, very low indeed. And even if they spend an hour pushing that drainage, the flow will still be small. But why do all those involved in body contouring still insist on lymphatic drainage? Specifically lymphatic drainage and not just fluid in general? The thing is, it's specifically through the lymph that protein is removed from the tissues. And protein is actually the very structure within the body that mostly holds onto water. There are also sugars, of course. Large carbohydrate molecules also bind it, but protein does so to a greater extent. And it's the protein that gives those gel-like properties, the gel properties of our interstitial fluid. Simply put, like a meat jelly, only a liquid one. This liquid jelly, as its concentration increases, naturally tends to thicken and obstruct everything. Thickening of the blood, lymph, and everything else. So, the goal of lymphatic drainage is to make this jelly as thin as possible. Right? And then the protein molecules won't pull water into the interstitium, into the tissue space. Because if you just drain the water, the protein will just pull it back in again, and the effect will be temporary. So don't hesitate to spend time on gentle fluid drainage. And the more gently and patiently you perform these tiny shifting waves, this kind of stretching, this is a very good technique if you use your forearms slowly without rushing and combined with vibration. The more liquid it will become here for you. Interstitial fluid, which is the fluid that surrounds your body's cells, will make the lymph thinner, and as a result, it will be much easier for you to work. What else can be used to thin the lymph? First of all, put the person on a low-protein diet. Usually to fight cellulite and lose inches, people are put on a high-protein diet and give up carbohydrates. Well, carbohydrates, of course, they do hold water. But specifically regarding cellulite and tissue fluid, large amounts of concentrated protein aren't great either, because it creates toxins and thickens things up. This is a method used by bodybuilders with high physical activity. It's not really quite appropriate for most of our average women who aren't exactly athletes, because they simply don't use that protein to build muscle. It doesn't go into their muscles, it turns into toxins. See, simply digesting protein as an energy source, as fuel, results in the formation of a huge amount of various fragments, debris, and they're quite toxic, and then the kidneys fail. Yes, absolutely right. Chronic renal failure. So this nitrogen metabolism is disrupted, especially if the person is also prone to drinking and such. Gout develops with all the consequences. So the simplest thing is to put them on a low-protein diet, meaning let them, fry up some zucchini, even eat them with a little sour cream. For protein, just some fish, and even then, not in very large amounts. And otherwise, more vegetables and fruits, of course, and even that dense skin, if anyone has it, will become softer in a week or two, and for a long time, for a week or two. Next, how else can you help? Especially when we encounter very tight skin like this, where the lymphatic system is already clogged and barely draining anything. And we have that jelly in there, it's already so tight and thick, and the tissues themselves are painful. In this case, you can resort to hot stones, to stone therapy or substitutes like a warm bottle. And what does this combination, adding heat to our mechanics, provide? All of you, as experienced cooks or consumers, know that when we make aspic, while it's hot, it's liquid. Or the same with kash, there it is, it's the same as aspic. We start warming it up, and it turns from a jelly-like state into a liquid. And this liquid can then be somehow made to be transported. But again, first you need to perform a main drainage, that is, to clear the system as much as possible. Because when we have thick interstitium, when these tissues are clogged with a very thick gel like this, our lymphatic system is in a deplorable state. Nothing will flow through it. And we'll be needing these tissues doing something there, but we have... So, by warming up and working on relatively small areas, we can actually achieve something. At the same time, of course, you need to regulate both diet and physical activity. Regarding recommendations for physical activity, well, focus most of all on breathing exercises. And accordingly exercises, well, depending on physical fitness. With poor physical fitness, that is, if we have a delicate girl, not muscular, well, then for her, we recommend various static exercises. That is, for balance or holding a pose, like in movies about various martial arts, where they stand like this, especially if they hang some bracelets here. A position like this, held for a long time. Why are static exercises useful? They activate the somatic nervous system and the mechanism of muscle excitation. The muscles get into a good state of tone. And don't forget to combine static exercises with stretching. Otherwise you'll shorten and tighten your muscles. Now for women, the ideal is to have muscles that aren't large, but are quite functional. That is, a woman usually doesn't strive to look like Schwarzenegger, although there are, of course, some, as you might expect, fans who, yes, do strive for that. Depending on the intensity, the rubbing motion itself can serve the purpose of either myofascial release and relax the muscles, or serve drainage purposes, or accordingly for warming up. For warming up, of course, we rub like this. But here we don't have that. That is, we have movements like these. And by the way, if you're interested, please, even with these small drainage movements now, you'll see that the leg will already slightly change in volume. It's already changed. It's already noticeable. Now it's going to become loosened up with one leg. With one leg. What else to do with this one? So before knitting and any anti-cellulite massage, we should always do lymphatic drainage, right? Well, of course, so that all of this start drainage from the upper areas. Yes, from the upper ones. Well, it's the general sequence everywhere, a general rule. Because look, why we start from the abdomen and from above, while on the back side we only have tissue drainage, no longer main trunk drainage. Right? Because in order for the fluid to go somewhere, you need to clear some space there. If our main trunks are filled with lymph to the brim, it will be hard for it to enter. There's practically no pressure there. It's like a sewage system, you see? And if our main pipe is clogged and you want to flush something, you'll get your own crap right on the floor. And the more intensely you pull the flush handle, the greater will be the result. It's the same here. If we push for rubbing and this harsh stuff right away without doing... First, when we perform drainage, what we are actually doing is causing blood flow to increase in the area. And as a result of this, the inflow of blood will swelling, increase the fluid intake into the interstitium, and we'll get the opposite effect. So we must first take care of the outflow mechanism.